An entitled male Karen loses his mind at the gym I work at, freaking out on us when we tell him that his 5-year-old kid can't use our equipment, claiming that he pays over $1,000 a year to be a member at this gym and that we have no right to tell him what he can and cannot do. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's attitude. Here's what happened. So I work part-time at a community center fitness area. Most of the time, the people are lovely. We have regulars and it's nice to see them, and they work out, they clean up after themselves, and then they leave. And honestly, it's great. But some days it gets annoying. The community center is directly attached to a local high school. The very nice pool often holds high school swim meets and water polo matches and whatnot. To get to the pool observation deck, one must cut through said fitness center. On a game or meet day, a lot of people who normally wouldn't have access to our very large, expansive gym with super expensive equipment can suddenly be in the building and cause all kinds of problems. I only mention this because you have to be extra careful to reinforce rules on these days in case some stranger decides to try and deadlift 400 pounds and breaks a fibula or something like that. And today just happened to be one of those days. Now, Mr. Karen is a fellow I've never seen before, which is honestly no biggie. Maybe he's a new member or maybe he has a day pass. Regardless, I don't recognize him. He has a small child with him, and my best estimation is that the kid is probably about 5 years old. The man is in jeans and a sweater, and this seems rather strange, but I mean, who am I to judge what people exercise in? Now, our rules pretty explicitly state that children cannot use any equipment unless they are above the age of 14. From the ages of 8 years old and above, they are welcome to use our track as long as a guardian is in the building. Now, the man and the kid are on bikes, and to be fair, the kid isn't being a jerk, which is something that happens a lot too. Kids will run in like psychos and try to use a rower and inevitably squish a finger or drop a weight. So props to him, I guess. I walk up and apologize and tell him the kid can't be on the equipment, but he is more than welcome to use the track. Well, when I said that, Mr. Karen loses his mind. He says to me, "Why? He's not doing anything." I say to him, "You're right, but that is our rules, and I'm really sorry. Kids have to be older than 8 to use our track unsupervised, but he also can't be on our equipment." The male Karen then says, "How do you know he's not 8 years old?" Now, it doesn't take a genius to know that his kid is definitely not 8 years old. So as I'm looking at him like he's crazy, he says to me, "You assumed his age. I could do whatever I want." I say to him, "I did assume and I'm sorry, but he certainly isn't over 14 years old, so he cannot be on the equipment." Eventually, he asks for my manager, who tells him the same thing, with this male Karen responding with a classic line where he said that he doesn't pay $1,000 a year to be a member here just for us to tell him what he can and cannot do. He then asked for the Parks and Recreation City manager's contact. We happily give him this information, and then he swears at us and tells us to get lost as he leaves. Fast forward, and later on, I tell my other boss about this. They then go down to the registration to see who this guy is, and it turns out this guy isn't even a member. They have no record of him at all. Most likely, he just came in to watch water polo. So this entitled jerk just freaked out on us and completely lied through his teeth to us just to try and get his way. And I'm honestly still blown away by how awful this man acted. Wow, that guy's like either actually insane or he was so embarrassed for being called out that he made up some weird lie just to try and get away with whatever he was doing. Like, this guy wasn't even paying $1,000 a year. He was completely full of it. He wasn't even a member of this gym, and he's sitting there acting like he's some kind of long-standing member of this gym. Like, this guy's a complete moron. And I've just gotta say it, I can't stand when I worked in customer service when people would act like this when they're caught in a lie, where they make up a bigger lie to cover up their mess up just to try and make themselves look like a hotshot so they can get out of hot water. Like, that really makes my skin crawl, and I can't stand people like this. So good for you and your manager for putting this guy in his place, and hopefully this guy never comes back ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My dad demanded that I dig a hole as deep as I can so that we can properly install a trellis into our garden. So I decided to maliciously comply and have some fun, digging this hole as deep as possible, resulting in my dad laughing harder than he's ever laughed before, and also telling this story to this day about why you should always give more clear instructions. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened back when the Earth was young, and MTV still played music videos in the ancient age known as 1997. I was 13 years old and spending yet another weekend helping my dad with yard work and home improvement projects. Now, I'm not complaining. I learned a lot about home repair, and rather than getting an awful teenage job in retail, my dad paid me me to assist him until I left for college. Now, just because I didn't hate it, it doesn't mean that I was a 13-year-old little jerk, however. On this day, we were putting up a trellis in the garden for plants to grow, and this was a simple job. Sink 2 posts, put cement in them to put them in place, and fill the trellis between them. My dad gave me a post hole digger, which, if you're not familiar with it, it looks like someone glued chopsticks to a pistachio shell so you could open and close it with a hinge. He showed me the spot for the first post and said dig it as deep as you can. So I went and made a foot-deep hole, thinking that that was enough to sink the 6-foot post that we had. He comes back and tells me not to be lazy and to dig deeper. In fact, he said, keep digging until I tell you it's deep enough. So this is where my malicious compliance came in as a 13-year-old. I knew that he would be back from the garage in about half an hour, so I went to town on this hole. I didn't stop for a break and just kept digging until the post hole digger fit in the hole completely, and I couldn't even open it to lift the dirt out. At that point, I taped a spade to a branch and I made the hole even deeper. When he came back, he said something along the lines of, well, let's see if you did it properly this time. He then drops the 6-foot post into the hole where it promptly disappears. There was a momentary look of shock on his face, but then he started laughing, like bent over, can't catch your breath laughing. To this day, I have never seen the man laugh as hard as that. When he was done, he told me I guess I did what I was told, but now I would have to figure out how to fish the pole out of the hole. Luckily, it was only a foot or so below the surface, and we got it out pretty easily. And to this day, my dad still tells this story as a warning about giving vague instructions. This was a really cute and wholesome story, because trust me, I think we've all been there where we're helping some kind of parent or somebody with the garden, or doing like housework or some chores, and you've just got to find a way to spice things up and make it just a little bit more interesting. So good for you for doing something really fun, and I'm glad your dad took it the right way, because really, this just sounds like a fun memory. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I don't want my mother-in-law staying for the first weeks after our daughter is born? Because truly, she is not going to be of any help, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So after our daughter is born in 2 months, I want my mom to stay with us for a few days all the way up to a week to help me recover and help out with our little one, as my mother is amazing. She has always been there for me, and she wants to stay as she lives 2 hours away and commuting isn't an option. She'll give me space if I need it and help cook and clean. Well, my husband wants his mom to stay for 3 to 4 days after that, but I can almost guarantee that she will just be another child to babysit. She is always telling me what to do, and even though she abandoned all 5 of her kids, including my husband, when they were very little and signed over her rights, I am fairly certain that she's going to try and push her opinions on me of what I'm doing wrong, and my sleep-deprived self is going to lose it on her and strain our somewhat tenuous relationship and possibly even damage it permanently. I highly doubt she will cook or clean, so it will be another person for me to cook for, clean up after, and take care of while my husband is at work. Now, he's saying that we don't know how much longer she'll be around, which I don't think is a fair statement. His mother is 54 with a little bit of health issues, and my mom is 56, and she just beat stage 4 cancer with a prognosis of 6 months. He states that he wants this to be her first grandchild that she has a relationship with. She has 4 other grandchildren, and she has never met them or tried to be in their lives. She says that she wants to do better and be different, but after her multiple times, including at my wedding, of making everything about her and inconveniencing everyone for her needs, I am skeptical that this would be any different, especially because my husband's birthday was last week and she didn't even call him, claiming that her phone was acting up. I told my husband it's not my fault that she doesn't drive, and that we will have to drive her everywhere, and that shouldn't make it so that she has to stay for days instead of visiting during the day. I mean, she only lives 30 minutes away. I also told him that if he wants her there to help him, then that's perfectly fine, but he shouldn't bring her with the expectation that I will be with her 8 to 10 hours a day without him. If he wants her support and wants to spend time with her, that is completely up to him. Like, I don't expect to spend 8 hours a day with my mom when she's staying over. If he wants her to come after the first few weeks, once we have a routine, I mean, that would be fine. But during the first few weeks, she's going to be too overbearing. He's saying that he could never tell his mom that my mom stayed the first week because that would hurt her feelings. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? So in my opinion, I don't think you're in the wrong here. Like, for starters, it would make sense for your mom to be there because you are a lot more familiar with your mom and you know for a fact that she's gonna help out. Like, you've spent a lifetime around your mom, so you know that she's gonna be a good person to help take care of your child. But in contrast, it sounds like your husband's mom is not a good person. She was not there for her kids when they were small, and it sounds like that behavior has carried carried over into her being a grandmother as well. And that really is unfortunate, but it's also a good sign of how she's gonna act for 3 to 4 days in your house. And I think the original poster also has it right. You're not saying that he can't see his mom, but maybe just not right now, especially when you're trying to get a routine down. Like, if your mom is not gonna help get that established, why on earth would she be around? Like, at that point, it would almost be better for her to come back maybe in like a month or something like that. And sure, you don't want to offend your mom or anything like that, but like seriously, you need to look at this honestly and be like, yeah, your mom is probably not gonna help out. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I think you're well within your right to decide who you want to stay with. And if that does not include your husband's mom, then that honestly is just the way it's gotta be. Am I the jerk for telling my friend's wife about his April Fool's joke that I feel was going way too far and was something that absolutely should not have happened? Because right now, my friend says that I threw him under the bus. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 35-year-old male, and I've been friends with my friend Jake since 2006. He met his wife Fiona around the same time, and they started dating a few years later. They got married a few years after that and have some children. And it's safe to say that at this time, they are going through a rough patch. Also, as a side note, Jake and Fiona are not their real names. After COVID hit, something happened to Jake, and he changed a lot. He became standoffish, quit taking care of himself, meaning that he wouldn't shower or brush his teeth for weeks. He developed an excessive eating habit and removed himself from his family life to living in a spare bedroom, all because of his smell. And this is where he spent all his time playing video games, watching anime, and doom scrolling online. He quit taking care of the house, didn't help out at all with any chores or the children, and only contributed financially to the house. This had a huge impact on their marriage. And although they have tried to work it out, I mean, he has gotten better, but it's still not back to pre-COVID times, maybe like 40 to 50% there. His progress just doesn't look like it's going to last. So anyways, this is where the issue comes in. Fiona wants a divorce. She's been wanting one for over a year now, but is not able to financially take care of the kids by herself. So as a result, they still reside in the same house. On the other hand, Jake won't do the divorce and is contesting it. They don't do anything relationship related and basically just co-parent. Well, this is when Jake told me about his April Fool's joke. He basically drafted fake divorce papers that look real all the way until you get to the end, and the last line would say something like effective as of April Fool's, and then a line would state that it's not a legal document. Now, I of course said no. Even though the divorce is not a big deal to him, it is a huge deal to his wife, and in my eyes, it would be him basically waving it in her face. He sees this just as a joke, which is what the day is for. Now, if they weren't where they are right now in their relationship, I would have said go for it, but considering the issues, it's a definite no. I didn't feel comfortable with this, so I straight up told his wife all about it, and she was not cool with it, and she ended up blowing up on Jake about it. He said he wasn't going to do it and was just shooting the idea around, but she ended up finding the papers in the printer's save history. He now feels betrayed that I would throw him under the bus for someone who is not even a friend. I feel it was super narcissistic of him to even try to pull this joke off, which is what I told him when he originally brought it up too, by the way, and that he was gonna terrorize his wife for a joke. Our mutual friends are split, with detractors saying that I jumped too far ahead and I started something that may not even happen, meaning that they think he could have changed his mind, while my other half say that regardless of whether it actually happened, there's no way it should have ever even been an option. I mean, he was just gonna get her hopes up and then crush them at a chance for a laugh at her expense. And I feel it was better to end it before it even gets a chance to happen. So am I in the wrong in this situation? Because I honestly don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk. I think Jake absolutely was gonna try and pull off this joke, and you were the last line of defense to try and save Fiona from the embarrassment. Like, first of all, Jake sounds like a slob. He sounds like an absolute piece of garbage, both literally and figuratively. Like, this guy smells so bad that he has to live in a separate room away from his family, who, by the way, he's completely abandoned. Like, there literally is no excuse for this guy, and it is truly disgusting that he would try to plan something like this out, especially considering that he's the problem in this relationship. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. If I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing, because it is pretty obvious that Fiona deserves way better than this, because Jake in this story is an absolute loser, and there is no excuse for him wanting to prank his wife in this way. My ex-mother's new boyfriend claims that me and my husband haven't been suffering enough, and that we're just entitled and we deserve to be treated like garbage, and I'm honestly so glad I moved out of that house. Here's what happened. Years ago, my husband and I were in a situation in which we were both in college full-time, we were working and paying for our own apartment. Now, it certainly wasn't a nice apartment, but we were very poor college students, so we just made it work. Over time, the place got more sketchy. The police started coming around, and we had a neighbor in the apartment next to us who was the very definition of trailer trash. She did substances, she had loud parties all the time, she sat outside on the steps eating her weight in cheese balls, and the list just goes on and on. She also had a kid with ADHD, and he was an extreme nuisance. He would run around screaming and slamming doors and all this other stuff. She very obviously neglected him as she let him run amok around the apartment complex. It was so bad that we were kept up all night with the noise, and it became difficult for us to study. We couldn't afford to move, and the apartment complex wasn't allowed to evict this woman because her son had special needs. At around the same time, my Karen ex-mother's second marriage was failing. My husband and I were out one day, and we came back to our apartment to find her sitting in our living room crying. And yes, before you ask, she had a key to the apartment. She explained to us that her husband had asked her for a divorce. She also couldn't afford a place on her own, so she proposed that my husband and I rent a place together with her. She had custody of my younger sister, who was a minor at the time, and she said it would be a 70-30 kind of thing, where she would pay for the majority of the rent and utilities, since she had to have 2 of the bedrooms, and she wanted to help relieve some of the burden that we were facing. Now, my husband and I were both so eager to get out of our current living situation that we went ahead and agreed with the plan. And trust me, this was a huge mistake. We paid her the rent that she asked for, but she kept increasing it and asking for more over time. Now, did I mention that she had a bad habit of getting herself into credit card debt or even her gambling addiction? Because that was an awful nightmare as well. Eventually, she started dating again, and things between she and I were taking a turn for the worse during this time. Before I even met this guy, she had been complaining about living with my husband and I, so he already had it out for us. Since she started to gradually increase her demands for more rent money from us, we were paying for over half of the rent and utilities by the time we left. She also constantly threatened to kick us out, and there were more incidents that blew our minds, like her throwing a tape dispenser at my head, or even throwing chairs and calling me names, where she would have violent outbursts and break glasses. I wasn't happy about the situation, and neither was my husband, so we made a deposit on our apartment in another city, and we had to take out student loans to do this, but we needed a more stable living situation because we were getting ready to do our final semesters. Well, when we did this made her panic because she couldn't afford for the place that we were staying in on her income alone. She complained to her new boyfriend, and the guy had the audacity to say that they haven't suffered enough, referring to my husband and I. I guess he thought that we were entitled because we didn't like being treated like that. Those words have stayed with me over a decade later. I'm not mad about it or anything like that. I just think it's deeply disturbing and sick. Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon mentality. I'm curious though, what does suffering enough look like for these sick jerks? More importantly, why do they need us to suffer and struggle? I mean, this is probably the first generation of people to ever want their kids to be worse off than themselves. It's also interesting to me because my ex-mother got to live at home rent-free while she was in college. She only worked during the summer so she could pay off her tuition, and she left school debt-free and never had to worry about paying her own rent or buying her own food. I've already done more work and worked harder than her, but I guess apparently I haven't suffered enough. And for those who don't know, working 2 jobs year-round to make ends meet, all while attending college full-time, is extremely stressful. Yeah, that sounds like an awful living situation. She clearly was taking advantage of your kindness and then had the audacity to try and treat you like garbage and be like, oh, I need more money. Like, that really is not fair, and honestly, I don't blame you for getting upset and saying, no, we gotta leave. Because that living situation sounded awful, and it was clear that she was definitely taking advantage of you. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her kid has no manners after he throws my wife's wedding ring out the window into our backyard? Here's what happened. A few of my friends came over to our house for a get-together lunch, and a few of them have kids and brought them along. One of my friends, who we will call Nora, has a 4-year-old son that is notorious for being naughty. He doesn't get along with other kids and is a constant source of crying and screaming. Nora brought her son over, and he said he wanted to take a nap, so I showed Nora the guest room and told her to make herself comfortable. Nora then came downstairs for a while and we hung out. Now, around 40 minutes later, this kid came back down and was smiling like crazy. And when I look at him, he had my wife's wedding ring. My wife is a doctor and doesn't take her ring to work, so she leaves it on our nightstand, meaning that this kid clearly had gone into our bedroom. I told Nora that I'd like him to give the ring back, but Nora said said that he would eventually just get bored with it and that I need to relax. A few minutes later, I asked this kid to please give me the ring back. Well, this seemed to trigger something in this kid because he ran to the window and threw the ring out in our spacious backyard. Now, I got really mad. My wife adores her ring, and I had it custom made with many little touches. It was extra special because it resembles a ring in her Nana's family, which she couldn't have because she married a woman. So after all that, I told Nora that her son had no manners and she needed to do something about him. Like maybe take him to a doctor because this is not healthy kid behavior. Well, she got very upset and then she left, and the other guests started leaving too. My wife and I spent the entire evening looking for it, but we couldn't find it. And right now I am a crying mess. My wife keeps saying that it's nothing, but I know how much she loves that ring. Despite all this, every mom in our friend group is calling me a jerk for taking things too far with Nora and her son. So am I in the wrong in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, all of your friends in your friend group should be on their hands and knees looking for that custom ring. The fact that any of them left without helping you out is enough proof in my opinion that these people are not your friends. Because if one of my friends had their stupid kid throw a ring out the window and I knew my other friends were very upset about it, I would take the friend's side with the ring and be like, what in the world is wrong with your kid? In this scenario, Nora absolutely should have gone to that kid and been like, what are you doing? Give me back that ring. Instead of being like, oh, he'll get bored of it. Just calm down. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. You had every right to get upset, and anybody taking your friend's side with their stupid kid, in my opinion, are not real friends in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.